I have reached Immortal 3, rank 5604, and I did it in under 300 hours, and I'm going to give you the advice you need in order to do the same, but way faster. First thing to understand is that you're not better than your opponents, or at least you're not significantly better than your opponents. Meaning, you might be slightly better and therefore you might be top fragging in a lot of your games, but you might not have enough impact to win most of your games, so therefore you land on roughly 50% win rate and get hard stuck. It is not enough to be slightly better than people in your rank. You need to be significantly better in order to see consistent results. Here's two graphs of a person with 52% win rate and another with 58% win rate to show you how drastically different their speed of success is depending on how much better than their rank they are. Question then becomes, how do you become way better than the rest of your rank in order to consistently rank up? So what I did was figure out why I wasn't better than people in my rank, and this is how I did it. I actively think every time I die and ask myself, why did I die? I take mental notes on why I died, and after a period of time I find a trend or a habit that is holding me back. But you don't need to be hyper aware and think of every single death and write it down, because this can harm your actual gameplay if it takes away too much focus. So another alternative that has worked for me is watching one of my VODs, which I know might be boring, but you don't need to be watching it in 1x speed. You can watch it at 2x or 3x speed. Just watch a few deaths. You don't need to watch the whole thing. I've found mistakes just by watching one half or just a few rounds from the attacking side and the defending side. And what I've done is I just write down some mistakes. This is all I need to do to find a trend or a bad habit. For example, say I peek when I shouldn't during after plants. If I see that this mistake repeats, then I fix it and I improve and I rank up. But let's say I can't find any trends or bad habits, right? My deaths seem kind of random, kind of unlucky, and I'm not sure why these things are happening. Well, then your bottleneck might not be bad habits. It could actually just be that you don't have any good habits. You might be kind of in a neutral state where you don't have any bad habits that are holding you down, but you don't have any good habits either that are bringing you up. So then you need to build good habits whilst not creating any new bad habits. But that can be quite difficult. So you need to find good habits to build and find a skill that you need to acquire. You need to find something that is missing that you need to add to your gameplay in order to improve. So how would you go about finding this? A big mistake I've seen lower ranked players do is watch professional players and copy them. But this can actually harm your gameplay more than improve it. It might seem like they're doing something really random, but in reality they're actually doing something that's extremely smart, but you just can't find out why. What I'm trying to say is that there's no point in copying their habits if you do not understand them. Because if you don't, then you haven't understood why, and so you haven't actually learned something. You haven't actually improved. You might see some short-term success in your games, but if you can't actually understand why they're doing it, you won't be able to further build upon the skill. It's kind of like math, right? Say, for example, I learn a new formula and I don't understand it and I instead memorize it. And I use this formula like this, I put it this here and I do this, and it might work. But when you get a slightly more difficult problem, you won't be able to actually solve it because you don't understand why you've done the things you've done previously. So you can't apply this knowledge to other problems in order to further improve. So I wouldn't recommend that you watch the pros if you're a lower rank, but it can be a great tool if you are in the higher ranks. If you don't understand it, you shouldn't do it. So what do you do if you're low elo? The best thing would be to get someone better than you to coach you, but not everyone has a high elo friend. The reason why coaching is the best is because the advice applies to you and your problems and your needs. And it's always going to be way better than some general advice that applies to a bunch of people. You can get tailor-made tips and advice, which is always going to be the best. You get specific knowledge about your exact problems instead of general knowledge. But let's be realistic, most people won't be able to get a coach, so what should you do? The best thing I've found is to watch coaching sessions on YouTube. Preferably you want someone that is playing the same role or agent and is of a similar rank. This will greatly improve your game knowledge and help you find things you could be doing better. So now that we know this, how do we speed up this process? How do we make it more efficient? Well, what you need to do is you need to be spending your time proactively, meaning you need to be actively choosing what you spend your time on. And you need to be picking the most important thing. So you need to be prioritizing. And by doing so, by finding the lowest hanging fruit, by finding the bottleneck, you can get the biggest return on investment because as soon as you fix that, you gain way more and improve more as a player. To give an example, say you have a professional Valorant player that needs to improve. If they spend 10 hours aim training, they might improve by 1, maybe 2% because they already have a good aim and it is not what they should be working on, and so they don't get as much as possible for their input. But if you give a total beginner 10 hours to work on their aim, I mean, this will increase the skill by, I don't know, 300%. And so therefore you should be spending your time on weaknesses instead of your strengths. I'm not saying that time spent on strengths is bad, but usually you do get more of a bigger return on investment time-wise by spending it on your weaknesses. You have way more to gain in less time because you are bad at it. When you're trying your best and you need to win, you focus on your strengths, and when we're trying to improve, you focus on your weaknesses. And so going from bad to okay and okay to good is way easier than going from good to better, from better to expert. So that is how you rank up fast. So you need to find out what you need to be working on. Is it fixing bad habits, which most of the time it is, or is it building good habits? Focus only on making this habit stick, and once it sticks, it will be automatic. So you do not need to think about it, and therefore you don't need to give any attention to it. We have a limited amount of attention. It's impossible to focus on multiple things at once, so just take it one step at a time and don't try and shortcut your way to improvement. Eventually you will have built a big library of good habits and you will have reached your dream rank. An important note is that your goal needs to be to improve and not to rank up. So in the short terms your games might suffer, because let's say you're playing 10 games focusing on how you peak, and because you're thinking about how you're peaking, you're not thinking about why you're peaking. And therefore you might take a couple of bad fights. In reality, what you're doing is you're refining the actual peak. And so in the long term, once you fix the how, as well as further down the road you fix the why, you'll have increased your skill by an immense amount and you'll improve super fast. You might have noticed that this video is heavily focused on habits. And this is because you need to be careful with your actions. Actions become habits and habits become character. So you need to be careful of your character, because character decides your destiny and future. In short, your micro actions, aka your habits, will be the biggest decider in whether you achieve your dream rank or not. These are at least the frameworks that have worked for me and helped me reach Emerald 3. If you do this, I guarantee that you will also rank up.